Hi, so today we're going to be looking at what I've been going over in film for the last few days. So, so the first thing we went through in the lecture was we went through the hierarchy of knowledge, and that's basically where you're able to feel suspense for the characters because you know something that the character doesn't. It's kind of like dramatic irony, right? For example, we have like a scene where you can see the enemy plotting some explosive device, and then you see the character walking by, and you see the character going near the explosive. You have this feeling of suspense where like the character might blow up, but the character doesn't feel anything, right? The character's just like, I'm in a random room, nothing's gonna happen to me. And so we get this situation where these actions, we get this situation where these actions that were previously known, that they will reveal new knowledge, basically, if that person would have blown up. Right, for example, let's say we have a person that steals a bike, then we can say that the bike owner will say, I should check on my bike, and then all of a sudden we've got the suspense because we don't know if the guy's actually going to check on their bike or if they're not going to, and the guy's gonna get caught. All right, so we've got different types of responses or different types of forms. Yeah, so it's like we've got that proetic or whatever. It's like where you're building suspense. We got the semantic, which we have words that have like certain connotations. We have symbolic, which is where we create juxtaposition or contradictions. And like for example, we see like a no trespassing sign, and then we just trespass through that sign. And then we've got cultural, which is just any reference to any known cliches that we have. All right, so all these are determined by different agents, and these agents are like what will show any or create any of the suspense. So you've got the characters, like they could be human or human-like, and these characters, they must have traits. So the traits provide the motivation that we need the traits will provide the motivation for the character to actually do the deed that would like create the suspense. But the motivation must lead to action. Like they can be motivated to save someone, but if, for example, if they don't actually like go on like save them, no action would actually have to happen. And in addition, once we actually complete those actions, sometimes the movie will withhold the actual outcome that will occur because of those, because that leaves more room for interpretation. It's what's called an open narrative. All right, so we have 5 principles of constructing the narratives themselves. So you've got time and space. When and where is this event taking place? Do things have to like travel far in order to like interact with each other? And how long does it take for interaction? For example, if we're recording like an old movie, like maybe a Wild West movie, we know that it takes a lot longer for mail or contact to be like between 2 people that are far away, because there's like horseback riding and all that stuff that they need to go through to actually get to the place physically. But in comparison, like a modern day, we could just send a text and instantaneously get that message. So that helps to create a certain idea of time and space for each individual movie. Next thing we've got are temporal dimensions. I'm not actually sure what these are. This doesn't seem right. I don't know. Okay, we'll get back to that one later. We've got the order, so that's like what order we want to present things in. Like, do we want to show something that's like, do we want to show the outcomes first before the end, and before we go to the beginning, or do we want to go in chronological order, right? The way we present it will depend heavily. Yeah, it'll depend heavily on They'll depend heavily on like how we want to tell the story. Like, do we want them to know the outcome? Like for a mystery movie, right? We know the outcome, the person dies, and then we reconstruct what happens beforehand. That could be like a nice use of order. Alternatively, if we want to make it so that we don't know if the hero is going to achieve their goal, then we start with the hero and we show what they're doing and how they want to achieve it. Then we should actually show them doing it. So they show the process to that goal instead. We've also got duration, just how long we want to make each section. Like if we want to emphasize something, we make it last longer. We want to gloss over a bunch of things at the same time, or skip over the boring parts of the film. Then we could like skip the sleeping. We just have like a montage of just like building an object, for example, like in Iron Man, right? When he's building the Iron Man suit at the beginning, we have that really quick montage. It probably took like weeks or something, but we only get it all in like a few minutes. And then finally, we've got frequency. So frequency is just how often we show a certain shot, and this, or like how often we refer to something. So this is important because whenever we repeat something, it means that thing is important for the overall storyline. So, for example, in Citizen Kane, right, we repeat the rosebud. It means it's really important because that's the whole motivation for them to be trying to find, wow, what's going on in Kane's life. And so when we have rosebud as the repeating motif, we keep thinking, what is rosebud? How is every single scene going to get us closer to rosebud? Right? So because of the frequency of that, they're able to emphasize that it's an important thing in the show. All right, so how do we turn a story into a plot? And so our plot is a combination of like diegetic material, which is like the stuff that the characters actually interact with, and non-diegetic material, which is just things that are around the character that we use to create more of a feeling of the scene, like the music, or for example, maybe text on a screen to clarify stuff. But the story is actually what we see, hear, and infer, and it's like the actual chronological like flow of events. And so to turn a story into a plot, we have to create a sort of hierarchy of knowledge to create suspense, to create some kind of emotion, whereas the story would just like identify the facts. So think about story as facts, plot as emotion. So one key thing about this is like a suspense versus a surprise structure. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, the hierarchy of knowledge, if we don't know something's gonna happen and then it happens, we'll be very surprised. But if we saw something that was foreshadowing something that would happen, then we feel more suspense. So we can create different effects knowing this. Like if we wanted to create a jump scare like in a horror movie, we can actually have like, you can combine these together, right? So we know that there's going to be a jump scare coming because it's a horror movie, but we don't exactly know what specifically it's going to be. So we'll still be surprised by the thing that comes out. And when it comes with suspense, it's just we have to have that like details implemented early on so that we feel suspense knowing that something is going to happen or is most likely going to happen. Wow, okay, so now let's talk about overall making a plot out of a story, because a story is really long, right? We talked about previously in a different video about how the screen time, like plot time and story time, and how like story time could be like years, but a plot time would only be like a few minutes of a section. So our goal is to cut down the story into a plot. And so what we can do is we can organize it as a general rule that 1 minute of screen time will be like 1 page of text. So we'll have like dialogue, we'll have screen directions, the way we want to set the scene, like scene setup directions as well, all in 1 page, 4.1 minute of screen time. And then when we start cutting down the plot, we're going to be condensing sections into each other as long as they fit a certain theme. We're going to eliminate things that don't benefit that theme. We're also going to be trying to create parallels between characters, or so like either they're the same or they're different, they have similar experiences, or alternatively they just like look similar, all that nice stuff with parallels. And if we need to like go through a certain section really fast, we'll just show a bunch of like related images. For example, like just instead of showing like the whole process in which the war started, like going through Congress, them approving it, what even started the war in the first place, we could just show a poster saying there's a war effort, we need to recruit people, and all of a sudden we already know there's a war and we know that they're trying to get people drafted to fight for the war. Next, let's go over range and depth. So that's how well do we know the character and how much do we know. So range is like how many different individual details we know. Like, do we know the character's like runs fast, the character likes computer science, but the depth is like how well do they know those things? How much could they tell you? And how many things do you know specifically about it? So for example, if they run, that's just like a surface level detail. It'll expand your range, but you don't know much about how they run. But if you talked about how they run like very long marathons, they've specifically done a lot of desert running, for example, like in the desert. Well, then now we have increased depth about that specific detail of the character. So it's the what you should emphasize in your movie or how much you should emphasize it also depends on the type of genre you're doing. So if we're doing a genre like comedy, for example, we don't really need that much depth because it's all about comedic effect. We don't have to have big relationships with the characters. We just need to know that they have a certain character trait and that they'll act like on those character traits. So you can see this more like in like early seasons of The Office where we don't know the characters very well, and so when all we see all these comedy things, right? We know Dwight has that certain like character trait. We know Jim is like the certain character trait. We know all these characters have certain character traits and then they'll act based on them, and from that we can get more humor out of the fact that we don't know as much about them. But as we go through The Office, we start to learn more about the individual character traits, and this can still work in a comedy and sitcom like The Office. It's just that it's not necessarily necessary to create that comedic effect. In fact, like while it could enhance it, it's again not necessary. There's different scenarios for each. With The Office, since it runs for so many seasons, it was definitely necessary to create more deep of characters to get more nuanced comedy in general. However, when it comes to depth, we really need depth in certain. Okay, so something that we really need depth in is tragedies, because tragedies are very emotional. They're meant to like tug at your heartstrings, and so if we don't have deep characters that have like tons and tons of different character traits, different nuances about them, then our issue comes that we don't step in the shoes of that specific character that we're trying to like feel tragic for. Like, think about it like this: if we hear about all these like horrifying things going on in the world right now, but we don't actually feel impacted by them because we don't know these people that are getting affected by it, right? Like all the wars that we hear about, it's just like, for us, it's mostly just numbers on the screen, and that's because we really don't have this connection, in like an actual connection. But let's say we interacted with the story of a singular person going through like a war, then all of a sudden we get more of a feeling. How are they? What are their experiences in the war itself? How is the war specifically affecting them, and how is it affecting their daily life, their families, and like how their living conditions are? So now that we know more about that, we have more depth about these people. We can feel more emotionally attached to them, and when something bad happens, we really like feel the emotional impact a lot more. So this applies a lot into movies where we need to have that emotional impact. We have to create more deep characters in order to achieve that impact. Okay, yeah, and that's basically it for lecture. Yep. Now look at the section. So in the section, we looked at form, style, and narrative. So the form is just the way it's structured overall. That's what the patterns we see in the film. Style is the way it's